So, are all your team members within the same generation? Hi, y'all. Thanks so much for joining me this afternoon. So, in less than 15 minutes, I'm going to be sharing with you some of the generational characteristics that you should be aware of when you're building and growing your team in your micro or your small business. Please like and share this video if you get value from it. I'm Dr. P, and I'm a strategic business coach, and I work specifically with micro business owners, the smallest of the small business owners. And I help them with scaling their business by helping them learn some strategies to improve their goals, their processes, and their operations. So today I want to ask you this question. Are all of your team members within the same generation? Because yes, there are several factors to consider when we're hiring members to join our small or our micro business team, right? But have you considered the generation of the people that you are hiring to join your team? Because generational differences are not those things that we readily think about as micro or small business owners when we, think about recruiting and hiring. We don't readily think about it, but it is something that we need to be thinking about. And as I go through this video today, you're going to hear why it is important for us to be considering this, right? So before I go any further, I want to ask you this. Do you even know what generation you are in? That is something that you also need to be aware of, not just the generations for your team members, but we all need to be aware of the generation that we are actually in. So just in case you're curious about the other generations, right? Here are some names and the age ranges for the other generations. First up, we have the traditionalists. These are those individuals who are born before 1946. Next up, we have the baby boomers. Baby boomers were born between 1946 and 1964. Gen X were born between 1965 and the early 1980s. The millennial or Gen Y, were born between the mid 1980s to mid 1990s. And then we have Gen Z. And those are individuals who were born between 1996 and 2012, right? These are the 5 generations that we need to be aware of as business owners, right? So like many of you, I have heard of all these generational terms before, but I was curious about the actual years that was associated with each one of the labels. So that's why I included the years. So I know I found it helpful. So I really hope you found it helpful as well. And remember, after watching or listening to this episode, you can always go back, hit the rewind, start over. And so you can get those generation names and their associated years that go along with them, right? So currently, the Bureau of Labor Statistics reports that all 5 generations can be found in the workplace. Like for real, all 5 generations can be found right now in the workplace. However, by 2030, there may be very few traditionalists left in the workplace, and there's going to be higher numbers of Gen Z in the workplace. Sorry about that. So this is important for us to know as business owners for several reasons. And it doesn't matter if you are currently doing your own hiring, if you have a person on staff that you call your HR person who is responsible for hiring, or even if you're working with the HR agency. Doesn't matter which role you have with the hiring process. The generational differences are things we need to be aware of, because once people are hired, they're a part of your team, and we need our teams to work together so that we can reach the goals we have set out for our business, right? So that's why you need to be aware of it as the micro business owner, as the small business owner, because the generational differences can truly impact how you build your team and how you grow your team within your business. So there was a point in time when people stayed in the very first job that they got, or they stayed with the very first company, the very first job that they got for like 30 or more years. They started with that company, started in that job, and they retired from it. But that occurrence is not as often as it used to be. And it's actually happening less and less with every single generation, right? And a big reason for the change, like I kind of hinted to, were the changes that have occurred throughout the generations. So you might be wondering, what does generational differences have to do with the productivity and efficiency of your team? And I'm here to tell you that it has a lot to do with it. It greatly impacts it. Because before you were your own boss, think of the organizations and companies that you worked for. Now think about those team dynamics within those organizations that you can remember, right? Yes, think about the things that you liked and the things that you didn't like, because this is really important. It's going to help you with understanding some of the things with generational differences you've been through before when you were working with for somebody else, and before you became your own boss, and before you're looking at creating your own organization and building your own team. So you thinking about those things. Now think about the differences in the age of the people who were on your team with you. Are you seeing any similarities? Are you seeing any differences? I bet you are. And as we go through this video, you are going to see whether you're right or you're wrong, right? So I know that I remember working in places where a lot of the staff were like 10 to 20 years older than I was, right? And they have been working in those places for anywhere from 7 to 25 plus years. And a lot of them, by the way, had so many issues with technology. And being honest, I was surprised at first. I was like, hey, y'all been working here so long. Y'all are older than me, so y'all should know these things, right? That's what I was thinking. Call that my bias, because they were older than me and they were in that organization longer than me. So I just assumed they should know a lot about everything. But it wasn't the case for technology. So I quickly realized something. I realized that if I could help my team members improve their technology skills, that I was able to get from them a better understanding of how the organization worked. Because since they were there before I was, they had that history of the organization, and they helped me to understand why things were the way they were, how I came to find them, and to let me know some of the things that the organization had tried before. And that I was able to get because I was helping them with their technology skills. You know, we were having conversation and we just traded information. And that's how I was able to build first and strengthen some relationships with team members. Another thing that I realized when I was working on committees within professional organizations was that I was working better with people who were closer in age to me. And by that, I mean that we were really productive and we were very collaborative, because I also remember working on teams with people who were like 10 to 20 years older than me. And many of them seemed to keep a lot of information to themselves. They weren't very open with sharing, and they seemed so competitive. And many of those people, they seemed so defined by their accomplishments within that organization. And I was like, wait, why is that? You know, and I started realizing certain things. I realized that those individuals were within a certain age group, right? I wasn't thinking about generational differences like that. I was just noticing, you know, observing and noticing what was happening around me. So it was just curious for me. And with those individuals who are kind of defining themselves by their accomplishments, they also did not really see the reason for even wanting to leave the current place of work. Even though some of them weren't even happy anymore, you know, with working there, their job satisfaction was in the pits, but they still didn't really see the need for wanting to leave. And those with the low job satisfaction, those weren't necessarily the ones who were getting high accomplishments, right? But for those who weren't getting those accolades, a lot of them weren't satisfied in their job, but they also didn't see the reason to leave their job. And some of them even share with me that the thought of starting over was really scary for them. You know, having to go to someplace new and learn new things, learn new systems, it was scary for a lot of them. So this brings me to what I wanted to share with you today, which is some of the common traits that you can find across generations, right? So remember, I listed the 5 generations before. Now I am going to share with you some, not all, but some of the common traits that you can find in each generation. So are you ready to find out what these are? So the first that we have are the traditionalists, right? Remember those individuals who were born before 1946. And the common traits that you will find among them is that they're hardworking, they have very strong willpower, and they have loyalty and respect towards authority. That is our first generational group, the traditionalists. Next up are the baby boomers. So with baby boomers, their common traits, well, first off, these are the individuals born between 1946 and 1964. And their common traits are that they're goal-oriented, they're competitive, and they value human relationships. Next up are Gen X. Gen X are those individuals born between 1965 and 1980. Their common characteristics are flexibility. They work hard and they play hard. So yes, they are hard workers and they also play hard. And they're very individualistic. So those are the first three. Now we're on to the fourth one. The millennials are Gen Y. And these are individuals born between 1981 and the mid 1990s. And they value collaboration and teamwork. They might seem to tend to change jobs often, and they value more than just salary when it comes to choosing a job and staying with an organization. They value more than just salary. And by the way, Gen Y are also called millennials. They are the largest generation right now in the workforce. Now that brings me to the fifth generation I wanted to share, and that is Gen Z. So Gen Z are those who were born, between 1996 and 2012. They're also considered digital natives. They tend to be very tech savvy. They value job security and financial wellness, and they're autonomous. So when they want to find out something, they tend to run to the internet to try to find that out, Based on these common characteristics, by any chance, can you even guess which generation I'm from? And a hint, just remember the stories I share with you of my experiences working with other teams. So the key to remember about the generations is that individuals in each generation experienced something major that shaped how that generation developed and resulted in those common traits that I had just shared with y'all. And I really hope that you can see how generations differ and how with those differences, you can see the benefits of knowing how to bring different generations together so that you can have a productive team working within your micro or your small business. And knowing a person's generation can also help understand their responses during an interview and also help with understanding their interactions with other team members and even with you. That does help. But by the way, do not fall victim to generational bias. And I'm referring to don't automatically think that everybody from that particular generation is the same. So do not fall victim to generational bias. So what I shared with you today are some of the general common characteristics that have been researched and found among the generations, right? But don't fall victim to generational bias. So you have these 5 generations. Think of the team members that you have right now. Think of the team members you want to add to your organization and consider what each one of these generations can bring to your team, plus the other things that you have a need for in your organization, right? I'm Dr. P. Remember, solutions plus actions equals results. Thank y'all so very much for joining me. Bye.